Welcome to Talk Plus Water, a podcast that takes a deep dive into the world of water with those making waves. My name is Todd Butler, and I'm your host for Talk Plus Water. My guests today are Gilbert Trejo, Vice President of Operations and Technical Services for El Paso Water, and Christina Montoya, Communications and Marketing Manager for El Paso Water. Gilbert, Christina, welcome to Talk Plus Water.
Thanks for
Thank you for
having us,
having
Todd.
us.
So I always like to start out with my guests by kind of finding out how you decided to devote your career to water. So Gilbert, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Todd, I give credit to my two older brothers and a reservoir 120 miles away in southern New Mexico. My two older brothers are electrical engineers, and I learned early on into their engineering careers that I did not want to do electrical engineering. It just was not my thing. So when I started my studies at the University of Texas at El Paso, I enrolled into the engineering curriculum in the College of Engineering. But at the same time, I was working part-time at the local irrigation district, the El Paso County Water Improvement District. I would clean canals. I would clean canals, canal banks, and growing up around these canals in the southern part of El Paso, I always saw the water in the canals, never understood where, how it got here, or anything. So that began my education in water, surface water here in El Paso. So just learning that there was a dam on the Rio Grande in southern New Mexico, and that the water would make its way from the dam, 120 miles down into my neighborhood. That I was now cleaning these canal banks was just fascinating to me, and that's when I said I'm going to be a civil engineer, specifically with an emphasis in water. At the time, it was just water, so of course, water, hydraulics, hydrology, treatment. It was a while later when I went into treatment, but yeah, it was not until I was enrolled in college that I realized I want to go into the water industry.
So when you say cleaning the canals, are you talking about like invasive plants or native plants like growing into the canal? You had to go like cut them down and do all that?
All of the above, everything from salt cedars to cottonwoods to just weeds. I was the landscaper. I tell myself the landscaper for the irrigation company. That I was fresh out of high school. And they gave me a truck, a heavy duty weed whacker and mower, and they said get to work. And that's what I did for summers and like Christmas break, spring breaks. I would work out in the field, and that in itself was an education that I still lean on in terms of operations and frontline workers working out in the field. And it was just an education. I had no idea how fruitful that work experience was going to be now overseeing the operations here at El Paso.
Well, this is not quite the same, but when I was growing up around Dallas, we would go out in the country, and a lot of times you'd go over a creek, and if it was a small creek, you'd see that like people would dump their like old refrigerators and stuff. I mean, I don't, you don't see that anymore like you used to, but did people like dump things in the canal that you had to pull out?
So there was definitely illegal dumping. It was not my job to pull out that type of debris with old couches or tires or stuff like that. Well, I would report it, and other folks would come do it. I was strictly on the herbicide team, and that was actually my job title. I was like a general service worker in charge of herbicide application to kill all the weeds and these invasive species or anything that would really take up capacity inside of the canal. So I would apply an herbicide, of course, safe for the water and for crops and everything they're using for. And then I'd come back a couple of weeks later when it had turned yellow and just mow it down and pick it up and take it off.
Goodness. Goodness. Okay, Christina. So how about you? That that's hard to he set a pretty high standard there for like
Yes,
a
he
good
did. He
origin
did. And
story.
well, my experience is very different. And I think it's probably more relatable to, I guess, the general public. I'll be honest, I wasn't really very interested in water for, the early part of my life, even after college. I was a broadcast journalist pursuing that career in El Paso for several years. And it wasn't until I decided to make the transition to public relations and media that I got the opportunity here at El Paso Water. that I really was exposed and thrown into, the world of water. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't know, I didn't think about, like many people probably don't, what happens, where the water comes from, how does it get to my tap, and where does it go? And that doesn't come to mind if you're not invested in it, at the very beginning. So once I got here and I realized, I'll tell you, I've been here almost 17 years and I learned something new every single day. Um, it's fascinating. It's just fascinating to see all the work that goes behind getting that water to the tap and all the work that goes behind when it goes down the toilet or down the sinks and now everything that we're doing with recycling water is even more fascinating. So for me, that was the turning point. That's when I decided, and I came over to El Paso Water in 2008, um, primarily just for the career transition, but I was sold and I was hooked. And I immediately became a water geek. And I immediately, told all my family, stop drinking that bottled water. What are you doing? We have such this amazing high quality water. It's such a lower cost, and it's so much better for the environment. So I really bought into it. And I have ever since then. And I feel grateful for the opportunity to be doing something so important for our community.
It's always interesting to me that, I know a lot of people who started out doing something else and then they go to work for some kind of war organization. And you rarely see people, you know, leave the water profession. It's one of these professions where once you get involved with it, like, people want to stay in it. And I, you know, those who listen to this podcast, the five or six out there that actually listen to it, you will know that I mentioned this before. How, uh, you know, I've seen a lot of people who are board members for water organizations. That's their first real exposure. They get involved with it, and they once their board terms up, they're usually looking for ways to get involved with water, stay involved with water in some way. So, um, yeah, water's got its own magic in that regard for sure. So, Gilbert, where does El Paso get its water? I've always wondered this before I really knew a whole lot about El Paso. I thought, well, they get it from the Rio Grande, and that's where it's coming from. But uh, there's a lot more to it than that, I think, isn't there?
Yes, there is multiple sources, Todd, and it hits to the core of our water resource strategy. So, from a surface water standpoint, you're correct. The Rio Grande provides water to El Pasoans whenever the Rio Grande is flowing. So, it does not flow year round. It does get dammed up in southern New Mexico at Elephant Butte Reservoir. Um, Farmers and the irrigation community, there's two irrigation districts in particular that control the releases. They are in charge of the water rights, um, and we act as a farmer. We're just a customer of one of the El Paso County Water Improvement District. So we have rights. We have purchased land that comes with it come the water rights, and that's how we've earned our rights. And whenever water's released, that's when we get our water for El Pasoans. Luckily, it does coincide with the high demand time of year in El Paso, which is for us is in June. So as long as we're getting water, surface water in June, and then it fans out earlier in the year to the early spring, and then it goes into the early fall. Full irrigation season is from March to October. But as long as we get water in June, when we need it the most, we're in good shape here in El Paso. 50% of our water can be provided by the Rio Grande at any point in time. But if we get that in June, we're in good shape. In addition to surface water, we have two aquifers. So for those who have not had the pleasure of visiting El Paso, Texas, we have a mountain. The Franklin Mountains divide our city right in half, which is something else. It's not something that you see in most cities. Denver, Albuquerque, they'll have the beautiful mountains out afar. You got to drive to them to get to them. In El Paso, we have a mountain that splits our city in half. But with that comes two aquifers. So we have two aquifers that are divided by this mountain, one on the west side and one on the east side. and we use both of them. We've tapped into both of them to provide groundwater to our customers on either side of the mountain. The west side, it's the Mesilla-Bolson aquifer. On the east side, it is the Hueco-Bolson aquifer, which is a much larger aquifer of the two. And those are two other sources. Adding a fourth source is the brackish water portion of the Hueco-Bolson. So although still the Hueco-Bolson, it is from a water quality standpoint, it is a completely different aquifer from that sense, from a water quality standpoint, which is highly brackish groundwater. So we've tapped into it to provide water to our customers as well. So that's four sources. Rounding out our water portfolio is a very strong conservation program, which began in the 90s, still runs strong now through a variation of residential rebates to help our residential customers conserve water, reduce their water footprint here in town, whether it's at their sinks, faucets, toilets, shower heads. But now we have grown that program into industrial, residential, and what's the word, Christina? Academic, institutions. Yeah, institutions. I'm sorry. So commercial, residential, and institution customers, which use quite a bit of water as well. So at any given point in time, when you look at our demand, half is from residential customers and half is from commercial, industrial, and institutional customers as well. So we've extended our conservation program to them as well. So those are 5 water sources that we've been depending on for several decades now. I haven't even mentioned water recycling. So add on to that list, the 5th source is water recycling. Very strong water recycling program since the 1960s when we first installed the first pipeline that served a golf course here in El Paso, 1960s. Fast forward to 1985, where we were some of the first in the nation, along with Orange County. Of course, Orange County, very well known for their aquifer replenishment program in the 80s. We were right in step with them as well, taking a wastewater, creating a drinking water out of it, all within the same water treatment plant fence line, within the same footprint. Very innovative at the time. But the key here, Todd, is that the technology became available, not only commercially available, but affordable at the municipal level. In that sense, ozone. So ozone was the advanced treatment at the time that made that possible. From a water recycling standpoint, in the 90s, purple pipe systems became the thing. Thanks to the EPA and a lot of federal grant funding, a lot of communities installed purple pipe systems to help take their treated effluent from their plants and use it to irrigate green spaces all over town. We were right there with the rest of the country doing that. So at this point, we had a strong aquifer replenishment program. We had a purple pipe system to help alleviate the demand on our potable water supplies. This was in the 90s. So really for us, fast forward now, you're talking about the Pure Water Center, really the next logical step for us, really a 7th water source that we would be adding in El Paso. So yeah, quite the story, quite the answer. We have more than one source. We have many sources. We have tapped into them all successfully, and really a model for water resource management in an arid environment.
Well, I've always been impressed with the leadership at EP Water because of all these innovations that you really pioneered. And as you were describing some of the limitations you have on the various options for supply, it seems like that innovation is kind of driven out of necessity. And so I'm really interested in talking about your latest venture, but before I do that, I just want to ask, what's the situation now with the drought where you are? We're through winter, and it's starting to get warm. I'm curious, what kind of impacts you're seeing to your various sources of supplies from this current drought.
Yeah, so our region is in perpetual drought, Todd. So So we measure drought by flows in the Rio Grande. That's typically how it's looked at. Snowpack in southern Colorado, northern parts of New Mexico, make up our watershed that feed the Rio Grande. Um, Perpetual drought is life out here, but there are times of extreme drought. Um, I would say that this year we fall into the category of kind of more of the same. We are in drought. Yes, there is limited supplies and snowpack this year in the Rio Grande. Elephant Butte Reservoir has very minimal, was filled very minimally this year. But from our standpoint, that's just life out here. We prepare for these types of years. It's not the first time that we have this type of, we'll say, low outlook for surface water, which I mentioned we do depend on during the summer months. But that's why we have such a diverse portfolio to prepare for these types of years. So while some folks, depending on their own situation and their own water story, this may be devastating to them. I'm sure the farmers who here in El Paso County, which are solely dependent on surface water, another hard year for them from a drought standpoint, but not for El Paso water or for El Pasoans due to the development of these multiple water supplies that we have. So yeah, I think another tough year in terms of drought, another year of drought, but that's life out here, Todd.
So let's go ahead and talk about your most recent announcement in terms of water supply, and that's the beginning of the construction of the first U.S. facility that's going to treat wastewater for direct reuse in a city water supply. So, Gilbert, please tell us about that program.
So the Pure Water Center here in El Paso is the first of its kind in the country and in the world to take a treated, cleaned wastewater and make drinking water out of it. But the key here is that it will be inserted or injected directly into our water distribution system. So something like this at this scale is not being done anywhere in the country or in the world for that matter. Not at the municipal scale. This is innovative in the fact that it's the ultimate form of water recycling. It's the ultimate sustainable, drought-resilient water source. It makes a lot of sense when we talk to our customers and they hear everything you just heard, Todd, about multiple water sources. Some really get into the details, pumping, storage, treatment. They start to run the numbers in their heads, and if they're just tracking energy, if they're that savvy, if they're tracking energy, they say, wow, reusing all of this water that we've spent a lot of money and energy on in perpetuity through this process makes a lot of sense. Folks who are not technically savvy and who maybe cannot, don't think in the sense of energy, but if they just think about the environment, if they're environmentally active and aware, to develop a new source of water without having to build pipelines cross country, across pristine lands, and the environmental impact that causes. If there's no new dam or reservoir being developed, again, in open country, creating massive amounts of environmental impact, even for them, they say, well, so we don't have to do any of that and we get more water here, safe and reliable. Yes, makes sense to them. When you talk to folks and they maybe aren't sure about what we're doing, just the mere concept of we have water here, their concern is, are we going to run out of water? Maybe not too savvy about where everything's coming, where all the water comes from. But when you talk to them and you explain to them, we do have multiple sources of water here, but it's limited. The El Pasoans, this El Pasoan that I'm talking about in particular, does not see the Rio Grande flow year round. They've seen it their whole life. Rio Grande riverbed is dry. They hear about groundwater levels. Maybe they hear about things going on in Southern California or in Phoenix, and they're just scared. They're like, are we going to run out of water one day? Do we have enough water is the question. And I let them know, we have 100 million gallons of water that flow back to our facilities every single day. We have water here in El Paso. But we do have to treat it and clean it using treatment processes that are well known, reverse osmosis, desalinating, processes, which in layman's sense, a lot of folks understand what that is and that can be done. Granular activated carbon, tried and true. A lot of folks understand filters that they use in their refrigerators or Brita filters they attach to their faucets. They understand that that's very safe and they trust this technology already. Ultraviolet light, there is no argument against the ultraviolet light, the rays of the sun that people relate to. But I tell them, imagine the sun, but the intensity of the sun just bearing down on water multiple times, many, many times stronger than the sun to disinfect it. These are concepts and things people make understand. And when you have these very personal conversations, depending on their levels, they understand what the project is and the importance of it. And that's what we're doing. After having some variation of this conversation, I let them know we're just doing what the environment is already doing, except we're doing it in a very shortened amount of time, a matter of hours versus years and decades or even generations. Technology now allows us to do it affordably, which is the key, and safely. And that's how we're going to add yet another water supply to the city.
So you kind of touched on some of the elements of the facility in terms of treatment, but could you kind of walk us through kind of the basics of how water is going to be collected, and which processes it's going to go through first to get to the end product, and also tell us a little bit about how much water the facility will produce every day.
Sure. So when we talk to our customers about this project, one of the first issues we have to address is this concept of toilet to tap. A lot of folks, are you really going to connect to a toilet sewer line and then that's going to connect directly to our pipeline? No, we're not. And then there's a very good discussion about how a water system works and how water is distributed and connected. And then the next question becomes, well, where does all of this wastewater go? I didn't know that these massive systems and pipes and treatment plants were even here, because a lot of the time they're out of sight, out of mind, to treat and clean a wastewater. And I say yes, and then we talk about the wastewater treatment process, how organisms are used to clean the water. A lot of folks find that fascinating. Filters, basins, ultimately cleaned and disinfected with chlorine. They're like, wow, we didn't know that this was going on. So then we get to the water, the actual source water that is going to be used for this Pure Water Center. And they see at our wastewater treatment plants that it is a clear glass of water. We tell them this is what we're starting with. It is not a brown water, a black water. It's nowhere near your sewer pipes. It is clean water that currently is being used for irrigation of crops. It flows in canals. In one of our facilities where we're doing this project, they actually have to drive over a canal filled with this water, and they're like, "Oh wow, I thought that was river water." It's actually better than river water because we show them a glass of river water, and then we show them a glass of our source water, which is this clean effluent. And then we really, seeing is believing, Todd, and then we really get to have a much clearer conversation as to what is it that we're doing. So we're taking a cleaned, treated effluent that is already used for crop irrigation, and that is the source water for the Pure Water Center. At that point, the water is treated through multiple barriers of treatment to ensure the quality and the safety, the reliability of the drinking water that we're producing from this source water. From reverse osmosis treatment. So there's membranes ahead of the RO system, membranes to address and start to remove particulates and bacteria and organisms from the water. Then they also protect the reverse osmosis membranes. RO membranes, of course, desalination technology, which is really, I've described it in several different ways. That you can see it as the hammer or the nuclear option on a water. That is how you completely take everything and strip everything out of a water from minerals. And of course, that includes all of the contaminants of concern, pharmaceuticals, all these things that people think about a wastewater. Reverse osmosis completely addresses and removes all of that reliably from from the water. And then there's ultraviolet light to further ensure disinfection of the water, or it's the first disinfection step, followed by granular activated carbon, which is another process that our customers understand this type of filter, and then ultimately chlorine, and then the water's still chlorinated on top of that for final disinfection. So when we walk our customers through these multiple barriers of treatment, all of which they understand, they maybe even use in their own homes, from an RO under the sink membrane to a Brita filter on their faucet, whichever it may be. They understand these processes, and it's walking them through all of this, and then they had a chance to see it as one of our dual purpose efforts, the pilot plant for public outreach, but also to proof of concept for the regulators. This is how we're able to gain their trust. But this is the treatment process, the treatment train that we are implementing. It is being used in California prior to, which is the reason why we're using it. But we're using it because it's tried and true, and we liked to be able to say that that's a benefit, and being able to tell our customers we're not doing something new even. For as innovative as folks are saying this project is, it's really not. These are treatment processes that are known. This is not black box technology. This isn't space age technology. These are processes that we all know are used all across the country every day to produce a safe drinking water. But instead of using one of them, we're using several of them back to back to back, again, to ensure the quality and safety of our water that we'll be producing for our customers, and their health and safety is the most important thing to us.
So do you have to, at the end of the process, do you have to add back like any minerals or anything for taste, or anything like that? You said you add some chlorine too, but I'm curious about the taste aspect of it.
Yes, that's an excellent point. So because of desalination technology that's being used, we do have to add minerals back into the water. But there's more to it than that, and I won't go water really nerd out on you here, Todd. But not only putting minerals back, but the minerals and the water chemistry has to match that exactly what's already in our distribution pipes to our customers. So there's a lot of chemistry, and the engineers and the engineering team has done a great job of doing that, exactly matching the water chemistry, so that we don't have any water quality issues out in the distribution system. Totally separate and different from what we're doing in the Pure Water Center. Again, if that chemistry isn't matched, we could have some issues out in the system. But we know of that. We've addressed it with a design. We've addressed it with how we're balancing the chemistry in our facility before we send it out to our customers.
So how many millions of gallons per day will the facility ultimately provide or treat, and what's the cost per 1,000 gallons?
This is a 10 million gallon per day facility that we'll be sending out to our customers. At any point in time, Todd, it's going to represent maximum about 6% of total water that we have in the system. So because of these multiple water sources that we always have in our distribution system, delivering to our customers at any point in time, this 10 million gallons per day is, I'll say, just 6% of the water at any point in time. So it's not a large amount of water, not a large percentage, but a very important percentage from our standpoint. Not only from a strategy standpoint, adding a drought resilient water supply, but also from a demand standpoint. Our goal is to provide water to our customers uninterrupted, even in the worst of times, which for us means no water in the Rio Grande at all. I mentioned that as long as we get water in the Rio Grande delivered to us in June, we'll be okay, but we're planning for that day. And this project, this water source, will allow us to meet that demand, and allow Pasoans to not be interrupted with multiple levels of drought restrictions and water restrictions in the event that happens. So again, not a large amount of water, but just enough for us to be able to make it through a summer without massive restrictions on our customers. So 10 million gallons per day. From a cost standpoint, as we're looking at the cost of different types of water, being out in West Texas, we look at everything at cost per acre foot. This project is right around $500 per acre foot, which is in line with our other desalination facility. Our brackish water desalination facility also is about $500 per acre foot. This, at the end of the day, is another desalination facility where RO membranes is the heart of the treatment. So when we ran the numbers and our projections show that the cost per acre foot is right in line with our desal plant already in operation, it made a lot of sense to us, and that's what we expect. So I'll say not an expensive water for our community, which is another good point to remind our customers. Those who maybe do want the pristine water fresh from the mountains, as some would tell us that that's the only water they want to drink. And after we have the discussion that water really doesn't exist when you're this far down a river shed, they do realize that this is an affordable water. And at the end of the day, they ask, what's this going to do to my water bill? So it's a good segue into that conversation, saying not much. There is a bit of a rate increase that our customers experience, not just because of this project. There's several projects and a large capital improvement program that we're executing for our customers to maintain reliability to the system, upgrades, aging infrastructure. That's a whole other podcast taught on aging water infrastructure. But we're in the same boat too. But it could be much worse if the expectation was, you know what, bring import water from 150 miles away, pump it through 2 pipelines, 5 pump stations, so on and so forth. That's a whole other cost, and they understand that very quickly, and is just another way to gain support for this type of project.
Well, I mean, $500 per acre foot. I thought it would be a lot more than that. So I'm impressed with that cost. Um, but overall, how do you think having this facility is going to change how you manage your other various supplies? Will it make a difference to that in some way?
I think it'll make a difference in that our groundwater wells will be able to turn off, 10 MGD of groundwater wells every time that this facility is on. So again, in conversations with different customers, depending on the context and what we're talking about, I refer to this facility as 10 infinity wells. So these are 10, if we get to turn off 10 groundwater wells, because we could turn on this fountain of water indefinitely that produces 10 MGD of water infinitely, then that's what I refer to it as. So it has a great impact on our local water supply, the groundwater supply, and in addition, again, drought-proof water supply whenever the river supply is late or non-existent as a whole. So it's a game changer for us, and I think for other communities as they look at the impacts of such a project, I think they'll realize that it's a major game changer anywhere that you are in the country. And Todd, I do want to make one point about the cost, the $500 per acre foot. You take a step back, and all you're really doing is building a facility and a very short pipeline to connect into your current system. A very
Right.
small carbon footprint, looking at it from that lens as well. You're not building large amounts of infrastructure, pipelines, reservoirs, as I've mentioned. You're simply just building a facility on a property that we already owned, and most utilities will already own property within their fence line to build such a facility. It is inexpensive, and I've mentioned it before. This makes a lot of sense, and when you talk to the community about this, it makes a lot of sense. Again, you're simply using a water that is already in your possession. You've already produced it. It's already flowing back to you. When you talk in these sense, in this way, yeah, that's how you gain public support for such a project.
Right. There's no question that, using the water that you have is always, the best strategy if you can do that. I mean, you don't have to worry about litigation with somebody over a new supply and all the costs that you mentioned, for example, for pipelines and pump stations and all those things that are, pretty much inherent with developing major water supplies from outside of the area where it's used and importing them. So, Christina, I'm finally going to get you into this conversation more here. So, I was looking at the plans for the direct reuse facility, and I can see that EP Waters embraced its role as an innovator through including a meeting facility at at that or a meeting space at that facility. Are you already hearing from cities that are interested in developing similar direct reuse projects for their municipal use?
Yes, and actually, I didn't mention at the beginning of the call, but the talk, but I serve as president of Water Reuse Texas, in addition to my role as communications and marketing manager. So, in that role, I have been introduced to a couple of utilities in Texas that are pursuing direct potable reuse. One is Liberty Hill, and I think they're pretty much moving along in their permitting process with TCQ. And then the second one is a Mustang Water District. And I think they supply, you're nodding your head like you know of them, in the
I
Dallas
do.
Fort Worth area. Yeah. And so they are moving along pretty quickly too. I think they're actually building a pilot facility as we speak. So yes, I mean that is the idea, and it's not just I guess a meeting area facility inside the plant. It's also, an education visitor center is what we're calling it. So it will include one area that can house for presentations. We want to host other organizations or utilities, but it's also going to include a very long hallway of exhibits and some interactive exhibits. And then also another presentation area with a large video screen. EP Water is very committed to ongoing education and outreach, not only with our customers, but with the whole water industry. I'm not sure if you've ever been to our desalination plant or if you've heard about it, but we host visitors every year from Egypt, Middle East, Spain, all over the world, in addition to from all over the country. So we do have a large research facility there, and we also have a large education center at the desalination plant right next door. But with this Pure Water Center, we wanted something that really kind of opened, a lot of plants and water plants traditionally don't have open windows where you can see the actual treatment process. That's just the way they weren't built. We can take people inside, but there's no windows looking in. And so it was designed with the fact that you can look into the treatment process areas and really see each one individually, what they're doing. And so we plan to have videos, animated videos that really explain to visitors as they come in what each step is. And then additionally, several exhibits that talk about what Gilbert was talking about in the beginning, just the water cycle. We're kind of speeding up what nature's already doing. It's a very basic concept, but it's something that helps people relate to and understand what we're doing with direct potable reuse. And then obviously we're going to have a tasting station. So water from the plant directly, people can taste that water. We hope to engage with them and take photos, really take a moment to understand that. And then also understanding what we're doing is good for the environment. So we'll have a couple of exhibits on that. So I'm excited about it. I'm getting to take part in really planning it and designing it with an architect and some museum experts that we're working with. But we really want it to be a place for not only, excuse me, our customers to come, but visitors from all over the world.
So, you said something that to me is very interesting because I'm just thinking about a lot of the facilities that I'm familiar with that were built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Those facilities were all built with the kind of, out of sight, out of mind, mindset. And
Yeah.
now here we are, 2025, and, water is recognized as being a finite resource that is a challenge sometimes in Texas or frequently in Texas to find what you need.
Yes.
And so, your facility, obviously has a dual purpose that, we wouldn't have thought of decades ago, really, that, the need to educate, not only other communities are thinking about building similar projects, but also the public who needs to have a better understanding of where their water is coming from and what all is involved with producing it. I mean, as part of the whole idea about conserving it. I mean, the more I think
Yeah.
I think that fits is you I'm sure probably done
Yes,
that to integrate
absolutely.
into your conservation message and educational program.
Yeah, no, and I mean, you make a really good point. And, I think I said at the very beginning of our conversation, I wasn't that excited or didn't understand the world of water. And I think a lot of it is our fault as a water industry for so many years, not only with our facilities, but just our day-to-day operations. It was out of sight, out of mind. We didn't want to talk to people about it. And I think we're noticing now and accepting that people want to know. And if you get people's trust and buy-in, whether you're building a potable reuse plant or rehabbing a wastewater facility, people are more likely to be supportive of when you ask for a rate increase if they understand your infrastructure, and number one, if they trust you. And that trust comes over time with you sharing information about what you do on a daily basis, not just doing it when you're going to build a project. So, what you're saying is absolutely correct. I think we have seen this turnaround, since the 80s to where we are now, where we want to open our doors, we want to welcome people, and utilities across the country should try to adopt that same approach because it really does help build that trust and that foundation with your customers that we need.
That's great. That's great. So, kind of in line with that thought, you get the last question, Christina,
Okay.
um, and that is, how can my listeners learn more about the direct reuse facility and EP water?
Okay. Well, we invite you to go to epwater.org. And we have a page there dedicated to the Pure Water Center. It's under our water resources. But also, I would say follow us on Facebook, on Instagram. We have a YouTube page. We have a lot of videos there. And you can go there and find out more about what we do. You can contact myself directly if you so desire. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities and ways that you can connect with us.
Great. Gilbert, Christina, thank you for joining me today on Talkless Water.
My
Oh,
pleasure.
we're very happy to have had the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, this was, a really interesting subject today, and I think there are a lot of people outside of Texas who'd be interested in this one, um, compared to some of the other discussions we had that are pretty Texas-centric. Um, so this has been Talkless Water, and my guests today were Gilbert Trejo, Vice President of Operations and Technical Services for El Paso Water, and Christina Montoya, Communications and Marketing Director for El Paso Water. I want to thank you, the listener, for spending your valuable time on this podcast. Finally, I want to give a big thank you to Anna Huff at the Meadow Center for Water and the Environment at Texas State University for getting each episode of Talkless Water ready to go. If you enjoyed our discussion today, please leave us a review and let us know that. And also, please subscribe to the podcast and consider supporting this podcast through our new account on Patreon. My name is Todd Bottler. Let's talk water again soon.